Is it live?
Hi, Dina. No, it's not live yet.
Faith, welcome to the craziness.
I know I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you, my queen.
Hi, Kelly. Can you hear me really fast?
Yes.
Perfect. Will you be able to let them know, or I can let them know when it's ready to go live, but if there is there anything else that you will need to indicate to them when it starts?
Nope, at 4 o'clock, they pop up on screen and take it away.
Perfect. Well, it's time to go live then.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Will we know how many people are in there?
We're ready, Dina.
Oh, shit. Okay. Hi, I'm Dina Lapolt. I am a music lawyer, entertainment lawyer, an activist, an advocate for music creators, a badass bitch, whatever else you want to call me, but I fight for the underdog. And I'm also the Songwriters of North America co-founder and board member. So thank you so much for joining us in this edition of In the Room series. Today I am joined by literally, this is my brother from another mother. I couldn't be more telling the truth about this guy. He is Willie Prophet Stiggers, and he is the chairman and the CEO of the Black Music Action Coalition. And we do, for those of you that don't know, Songwriters in North America partners with the Black Music Action Coalition on a lot of our initiatives. So, Prophet, I'm excited to talk to you today. Of course, I can go on and on and on as an introduction, but instead, I want you to go into the things that you do, especially with your journey coming up in the world, starting as an activist when you were 13 in the Bronx, and where you
Right.
are today. And we're going to get started after that. Mm.
Well, thank you, Dina. You guys have to pardon me. I'm a little under the weather, but there wasn't going to be any way that I did not participate in this Zoom. I have so much respect for Dina, A, and B, equally as important for Songwriters of North America. I think the organization that you guys have built is a tremendous organization, the leading organization in this industry representing songwriters. And if you're not a member, join. I will tell you that for the past almost 4 years, going on 5 years, I have watched and worked alongside SONA. They are about that life for real. They are in the streets. They are in DC. They are in Sacramento. They are everywhere they need to be fighting for creative rights. And I don't know of another organization that do it as strong and as dedicated to these issues as they are. But as Dina mentioned, I'm Prophet, co-founder, CEO, and president of the Black Music Action Coalition. For those who don't know, BMAC started in 2020 in response to the show Poison. Around 200 of the most influential lawyers, producers, managers formed an organization that would hold our industry accountable to the pledges that they were making around social and racial justice. And for some reason, the group elected me to sit in a leadership position. As Dina mentioned, I'm from the Bronx. I've been an activist since 13. Started my activist career, if you will, with the National Action Network with Reverend Sharpton. Kind of grew with him when he started NAN. I developed the youth division of NAN, Youth Move, and built that nationally for about 5 to 6 years. And then went on to do a whole bunch of other things. In high school, launched the Student Power Movement. Some of those people that I went to high school with, I was a part of that movement. Record exec Russell Jones, who's at RCA, stylist to the stars, Wari Vice, and also Alicia Keys. Some of her first activism was with us when we launched Student Power Movement, in which we were able to get make many wrongs right that was happening in our school, led walkouts, the whole 9 yards. And that kind of led me on a journey for fighting for what was right, fighting for the underdogs, being a voice for the voiceless. and kind of having the courage to stand up and speak truth to power. So when 2020 took place, I guess those sort of leadership skills that I had developed over the years landed me in the seat of president CEO of BMAC. And as Dina mentioned, we do a lot of our advocacy work with Songwriters North America and the Music Artists Coalition, uh, two organizations that I have tremendous amount of respect for and I have learned from and over the past 4 years. So I'm happy to be here to get into this conversation.
Get into the conversation. Well, we're going to get into the conversation because, as everybody knows, the state of the country right now is in severe crisis. Particularly in the music business where, of course, it's everywhere, but as speaking internally in the music business, you and I have been talking about the obliteration of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. I mean, this is happening all over the country in every single aspect of the music, of the, economic business in the US, but also in the music business, you and I are dealing with this. And we've called on our partners, agencies and record companies and publishers to come out and make a statement. And the thing that's really bothersome about all this is that everybody is really freaking out about what is going on. And we're not seeing a lot of reaction. And, I want to ask you about this and how do you feel about it? And, I want to gather the troops for the midterms. I mean, we have so much to talk about.
Well, yeah, we definitely reached out to everyone in the ecosystem. Really, and you and I had this conversation. What was important to me was beyond just a statement being made, to really understand where they at with this issue. There's less Black executives in the music industry currently employed than there were in 2019. So we've seen this sort of backsliding, if you will, on those commitments that were made. And I need to understand, what did that mean? I mean, we were so loud, the companies were so loud in 2020. And I think that had a lot to do with the public reaction to social and racial justice, sort of globally, and understanding that their artist and the consumer was very concerned about where the record companies and the streaming platforms, where they were at with those issues. And I think they need to understand that that time is once again among us. I think what we are watching happen on a corporate scale nationally in terms of the boycotts and the public reaction, that same attention is being given to the industry. That's one of the reasons we were asking people to sort of make these public recommitments, if you will, to DE&I, not necessarily for you and me, but so that their consumers and the artists that are associated with these companies can boldly stand next to them. And I will say, something that is reassuring, Dina, I had conversations behind the scenes with many of those companies. And for various reasons, the public statement wasn't necessarily the route they wanted to go, but I was encouraged by some of the conversations I was having with some of these companies. Many of them did not remove DE&I away from their sort of corporate structure, and actually, was doubling down on some of those efforts. Either work that we're doing together or work that they were doing, aside from the stuff that they do with BMAC. So it wasn't all dismal, if you will. And I think that this current administration is it's so easy to have a target put on your back,
Right.
that people are trying to be, um, careful with how they step out there around this issue when the highest seat in the office is being so vocal about reversing it. So I think people are trying to be strategic,
Right.
but although there's less Black employees than there were in 2019,
Right.
all isn't lost in terms of that work that has happened over the past 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the need to be strategic about it, because the last thing you want to do is, have a target on your back and then, it all goes to shit. I mean, it's going
Right.
to shit now, but the strategy is everything around it,
Yeah.
and because eventually we have to get what we need. I mean,
Right.
you know, it's very disheartening, as an ally to be in this position, because as allies, we are the ones that have to fight for people of color. Yeah, you guys fight for yourself, but we have to fight for the people of color. Like, that is the
I mean,
job.
well, that's who holds the power. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't be pushing for DEI. So
Right,
those who are sitting at those seats are not Black people. Those who
right.
actually have the power to change the narrative, to rewrite the script, to kind of set this country on a right path, are not Black people, are not people of color, and unfortunately, aren't many women in that seat
No,
as well.
there's no
So,
women
and
either.
I'm gonna tell you something else, Dina. I was in the UK earlier this year. Lucian asked me to go to Europe to meet with the Universal team over there. And there
Mhm.
wasn't really an agenda. There wasn't really you know, a set purpose outside of me just gaining sort of like a global perspective of what's happening and what they're doing. I hadn't met with the Black Music Coalition that is based out there, so it was a great opportunity for me to kind of see it from a global perspective. And one of the things that they have over there, a brilliant woman named Ange, who is the Chief People and Inclusion Officer for Universal. They call it DE&I and B, and the B stands for belonging, because one of her theories is that, inclusion is like, okay, we're going to let you in, we're going to include you in, but belonging suggests you should have been here to begin with, so it's DE and I and B over there. And they are doubling and tripling down on those efforts, which was very reassuring to me, just from a global perspective. But we definitely need that energy here. Yeah, I wasn't completely um, discouraged by those conversations I were having. I was having, like I said, some of them really sort of inspired me to understand and helped me understand that all isn't lost, and that there are people in position that care and that understands not just the sort of moral, um, the moral side to this thing, but from a business side. I mean, the reality is that the world is changing. America is changing. The idea that white men are just dominating from a population standpoint, those statistics are changing. And it's becoming more of a diverse country. So you want to see that in your workforce. That will allow new ideas. That will allow you to grow your company faster. So it's not even an issue of morality at this point. Let's just look at the economics of it. And hopefully people are leaning into whichever side, because ultimately we need to see the executive side of this business as reflecting the consumer side of it,
Right.
in terms of the diversity that exists there, and the artists that actually make up and impact the bottom line the way they do.
Yeah, listen, I hope, that's why I'm behind the scenes with you, calling people out, because as a lawyer in the music industry, I mean, everybody knows that I'm a creator-led, firm. We don't have any conflicts of interest. We don't represent companies. We don't represent record companies, publishing companies, streamers, but we do have people that are adverse to companies, which are artists, songwriters, and executives. And I can tell you is that, there's a lot of layoffs happening,
Yeah,
and they're all women, and most of them are all people of color. So here's what we're dealing with.
yeah,
So everybody can go and tell me that this is happening behind the scenes and everybody's prioritizing it. But, and I've got to be probably one of the most, prominent lawyers out there. So I have a good handful of executives like my colleagues.
yeah.
So I'm hoping it's different on other people's desks. You know what I
It's
mean? I hope
it's
my
not.
desk is I hope my desk is an alienated desk.
Unfortunately, it isn't. But our job is to continue to push, continue to keep that pressure. One of the reasons we started BMAC is because we knew a time would come where
Yeah.
social and racial justice wasn't the hot topic. It wasn't the thing that, got you the clicks. So if there wasn't a movement that was committed to continue to keep the pressure on, then this will be a mute issue today. But
Yeah.
we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to be diligent in this fight because it was crazy to me when 2020 took place, Dina. I said to Sean Halliday, who's the first one to give me a call about the formation of this movement, did all the labels and publishers have the same publicists, right? Because they all pull up that same statement of solidarity with their black brothers and sisters. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You haven't promoted, this person in X amount of years. Women aren't paid the same as men. How can you sit and say that you stand? But those public declarations was our sort of green light to hold them accountable to those pledges that they made, and we will continue to do that. And with the help of yourself and other advocates, we will continue to put this pressure on.
Yeah.
It's working. Yes, no, we're not where we want to be, right? But we are in a different place than we was before these organizations formed. And I believe in my heart, otherwise I would go off and start managing artists or go off and become a great actor or some other stuff if I didn't believe that the work that we're doing matter and actually
Right.
going to make some real sustainable change.
Yeah, I agree with you, Prophet. I mean, it's, you and I were real good at working across the aisles,
Yeah,
okay? And listen, I mean, I don't know if anybody on this Zoom listening in or on this YouTube stream is listening knows this information, but copyright is a Republican issue. So even though on the other side, where we feel like these some of our issues are being compromised, like DE&I, we look at the fact that, we work in a music industry and freedom of speech is a big
right,
issue for Republicans. So is copyright.
right,
So if you think about that, as you and I talk about, traditionally you have the Republican Party doesn't really like regulation, and a lot of copyright is regulated. So they don't like that. The
right,
last time everything was Republican, we got the Music Modernization Act passed in
right.
4 years. I mean, this is the first massive copyright reform in a 45-year time frame.
Yeah,
So the same thing with freedom of speech. So you and I know, like recently in Atlanta and in Louisiana, thank you to Kevin Lyles and his lobbyist, Phil Woloski, who are leading the charge on a lot of our state-led legislation for freedom, creative expression. You and I have been in the trenches on the federal part and in the
right,
California-based law. So when we're talking about protecting creative expression, when you and I got into this, we realized after we formed our rap legislative working group, we had a professor that did the social science research for us and
right,
told us that it's only Black men, mainly Black men, that are sitting in prison that were convicted, on the use of their lyrics.
right.
So you and I make it about First Amendment. So now people are listening to us,
Right.
So let's talk about that for a second.
That's
So,
something that's one of the one of the things about leadership is, when you have these groups and you're able to learn from each other and you're able to, share strategies with one another. That was one of the things that I learned from you over the past 4 years was that ability to work across the aisle and be strategic with how we fight. Interestingly enough, 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to sit with Ambassador Andrew Young at the Live Nation office here in Atlanta. And he talked about this very thing, about how they had to work across the aisle and had to get white people in Georgia and black people in
mhm,
Georgia to come together to get the transportation bill passed, to get the
mhm,
airport bill, to get things done that are real things that led to the growth of this economy here in Atlanta that's making it now one of the cultural capitals of the country. It came directly from understanding the strategy of working across the aisle. And a lot of leaders didn't understand that. a lot of people just thought one way, you have to be this way, you have to, you can't water down the message, you can't do this. It had nothing to do with that. It was about being strategic with how we craft these things so we ultimately get what we want. So yeah, we are working across the aisle. First Amendment, freedom of speech is something that we all can agree on. And so yes, some people didn't like the word Rap Act, didn't like the name of it. But really, ultimately, we're talking about freedom of speech. We're talking about the idea of folks being able to express themselves creatively without the government or the courts using that against you to prosecute. That's something everyone can lock into. So yeah, we are adjusting the strategy and making it where everyone can digest this and getting support, by the way. And ultimately going to lead to victory, which is where we ultimately need to go. Otherwise, why are we in this race?
Right. And let me explain kind of the overview of what our creative expression legislation encompasses so people understand, okay?
Hey,
It's not that you can't use somebody's lyrics against them,
right,
okay? What the goal of the legislation, like in California, that Prophet and I were involved in this with Governor Newsom, is the Decriminalizing Creative Expressions Act. What basically it says is that prosecutors can't introduce lyrics as evidence of someone's crimes or anything against them, civil or criminal. That has to be presented to a judge
right,
in a private hearing with the defense attorney. The judge, so it's outside the jury for a minute until the judge looks at the evidence. And if there's no other evidence and it's just lyrics, then the judge can say, I'm not going to let it in. It's prejudicial.
right,
Obviously, if the judge has all these different, evidence, all this other evidence that's presented to them, and they see that the lyrics is part of the evidence that fits into the puzzle, if they want to allow that in, they can allow that in. So it doesn't preclude it altogether. So, Prophet, this is important to note because people come to you and I, and
yes. And I'm happy
basically,
you're unpacking this, by the way.
yes, and they basically say to us, well, someone killed the guy and he says it in a song, and you guys are like, this is not fair. And, it's not like the lyrics will not be presented,
Right,
but there has to
right.
be other evidence.
And so people are extremely clear. This started out from a white paper that you wrote, um, a tip that you got from Shirley, who was at Variety at the time, who talked about 500 cases at the time of Black men who were incarcerated solely based on lyrics.
Right. It came
Now
out of
we
that.
know that now we know that number is 2,000 plus.
Yeah.
This was before Young Thug, before any of those cases were even, in play. So this isn't about allowing people to get away, get out of jail free card, or be able to say what you want and not. It is saying that this cannot be the only thing you use.
Right.
If there's other evidence, well, then fine, but this cannot be, and then it needs to be, as Dina said, brought to a judge prior to the jury, and then make a decision on this and then introduce it. So a lot of people, because my phone, was ringing from Black people, white people, like, hold on, what are you saying? So it's okay to rap about killing? No, 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 no. It had nothing to do with allowing people to do that and get away with it. It was about this cannot be, because it creates a slippery slope. And our community was the only community being affected by this
Correct.
way. So
Correct.
what is that about? It's
Right.
not lost on us that this isn't going on in other genres.
Correct.
Which lyrics are in other genres, just for the record. There are lyrics that speak about killing. There's lyrics that speak about rape. There's lyrics that speak about misogyny. There's lyrics that speak about all of the ills in our community besides rap music. But these things are only used, and were only being used against Black men. And that's why this became an issue. And we thank this great state of California for being one of the first to lead the charge at creating a state bill to kind of address that.
Right.
Which,
No one
and
up
that's
going to arrest Carrie Underwood for beating the shit out of, her boyfriend with a bat,
right,
the cheating
right,
boyfriend. But here's the thing I want to say. So, two things on that. the biggest issue that you and I were, when we learned from Professor Jack Lerner, who is the professor of criminal law and intellectual
Shout out to
property.
Jack Lerner.
Shout out to Jack Lerner, who did the social research for us, okay, who's been running Rap on Trial, the legal clinic, for the past 15 years, and who authored, the Rap on Trial legal treatise for defense attorneys. What he educated our group about, and you and I started the Rap Legislative Working Group, a few years ago, but what he educated all of us on, if you remember, is that once it's introduced, the jury's prejudice. That's it.
Right.
So
Right.
that's the biggest issue. Even though prosecutors know that it could be thrown out because it's irrelevant, okay, and the judge, and it'll end up being struck. It doesn't matter. The strategy of introducing it in the trial is when it's over. That's when the jury sees, like you said, mostly Black men on trial. It gets introduced, and that's it. There's no hope for that case, and that's what we're seeing. So,
and one of the things that I love is this is where the systemic change takes place.
Right.
Policy. This is where it has to change. Every fucked up thing done in this country was backed by legislation. There was laws that said Black people can't use this restroom. There was laws that said it was legal to discriminate against a group of people. These were laws that had to change. So as we continue to protest and we continue to boycott and continue to raise the issue, we have to keep our eye on the legislative process because this is where it's going to actually create the systemic change we're talking about. And this midterm election, we have to keep our eye on this. I know that we are all sort of, in this sort of emotional roller coaster right now, but we have to stay focused over the next 2 years because we have an opportunity to make some change there. And I think for some people who didn't think this shit was real, are now starting to see how real it is. And we need people to gather and stay inspired and show up in 2 years for this midterm so that we can actually try and redirect and balance some of this chaos.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's super important. And that's something that both, all of SONA, BMAC, and the Music Artists Coalition, will all be working on that and getting information out to our members. One of the other things I want to talk about that is big on yours and my radar is this No Fakes Act, which would create a federal right in voice and likeness.
Yes.
And, SONA behind the scenes, BMAC, MAC, we've all been working with the Recording Artists Coalition and SAG-AFTRA on creating this, federal right of voice and likeness, which could curtail the deep fakes. I mean, one of the things that you remember, Prophet, is a couple years ago, I literally woke up to a #1 song with Drake and 21 Savage, only for 21 Savage's manager, Meezy, to call me and say, "That's not us." And I'm what? Yeah. And it literally took us 4 days to pull it down because there's no right. There's who has this? There's no federal right of intellect of voice and likeness. So if the No Fake Act passes, it would create this right, which means it's fully licensable, like trademark and copyright, and it has statutory protection.
Right.
Right now, although we pull these things down, it's like whack-a-mole, okay? There's no statutory right. So people are not afraid to do it.
Right.
And
this is something that songwriters, producers particularly need to really double down and lock in on. Right. I sit in a room with some producers and people, oh man, I love AI, the technology, we're going to be able to do this. This isn't anti-AI, right? This isn't technological advances. And this isn't that. We got to be very clear about what the fight is because this is something that I can't understand why every songwriter and every producer are not behind this, doubling down, tripling down on the support around this because it 1000% protects us, period. Right. And all we want to do is create the guardrails so that we can have responsible usage of the technology. If you remember, and this is an opportunity for us to have a seat at the table. to help dictate how this new sort of revolution takes place. Because when the first digital revolution took place with the streaming platforms, the songwriters and the producers were not at the table. The artists were not at the table.
No, they were
It was
not.
deals struck strictly with the record companies and the streaming platforms. And we was
Right.
coming Johnny come lately after the fact, trying to fight for our literally peanuts.
Right.
Still,
Mhm.
this allows us to be at the table early on to try and not
Yeah.
only regulate how the technology is used, but to make sure the creative community are
Right.
part of the decision making and the revenue stream that comes from this.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to Mitch Glazer, who runs the RIAA, and shout out
Absolutely.
to, Duncan Crabtree Ireland and Jeff Bennett of SAG-AFTRA, because they
Absolutely.
really do make sure that we have a say,
Yes.
and that we are at the table and we are getting up to date, information. And, the good thing is about the songwriters in North America, I mean, it was actually, it's our 10-year anniversary in April, I mean, it's crazy that, Kay Hanley and Michelle Lewis and I came together, and it all started around, Washington, with the consent decrees that govern ASCAP and BMI, where all of a sudden overnight, the Department of Justice puts out a decree that now it's going to be mandated full, works licensing, meaning that these streamers don't have to go to both ASCAP and BMI. They could pick one.
Mm.
And they pick one, and then they pay all the money to that organization. And then that organization and that songwriter or songwriters have to pay their co-writers, which could be at BMI, they could be at like, not good. It would have really killed the creative community.
Right.
And SONA filed a lawsuit against the Department of Justice, and it put them on the map as far as like members talking to them directly. And I bring this up to to just remind everybody that that's how we got to the table. Like, nobody was up inviting any creators or songwriters or their lawyers to like weigh in on legislation, or like, what do you guys think about? It wasn't like that. It was the
Right.
trade organizations that were literally calling the shots and would update us we were on a need to know basis. And we knew it, and the creative community knew it. So it's like, because of that, members directly started reaching out to us, and those relationships are key,
Right.
because we have certain members of the Senate and Congress that will literally call all of us, call you, Prophet, call Jordan Bromley and Susan Janko of the Music Artists Coalition, call me or Michelle or Aaron McAnally, or Linda Bloss Bloom, who is our lobby, on the board of SONA, who's in DC and who's been a lobbyist for 20 years. So they will literally call us to check, so and so from, Spotify came, or
Right.
or Sirius XM, to say this is really good for creators.
Right.
And you know what? Now we have put in this kind of like guardrail.
Yes.
Not that we were asked to be at the table, is that now they have to put us there.
Right.
There's some resentment, okay? I
Oh, you
mean,
better believe it. You
we
better
try to
believe it.
deal with the resentment, but at the end of the day, it doesn't come too much, because they know that we'll, barge in.
And that you represent a huge constituency that matter, and that's what I love about Sona, is that, you guys came in swinging and now been swinging for the past 10 years, and you've forced yourselves at the table and you're respected at that table.
Right.
And that's why I think all of your members should be very proud of the leadership, because the growth and the strength of a movement is in that leadership. That leadership is key. And I will say to every Sona member that's watching, and if you're not, you need to join. You have some kick-ass leaders at the top of this thing that are no joke, and get the respect. And don't get the respect just because they're beautiful women, but get the respect because they are actually fighting and fearless in that fight and relentless in that fight, and have created that level of urgency around the issues that matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's absolutely important. Thank you for that shout out. Specifically, are advocating for creators in the music industry. I mean, with all this stuff happening in the country, like you and I both talked about how it's important to work across the aisle. And I
Yeah.
think that strategy you and I have talked about behind the scenes is such an important part of this, So how do we get our talking points across when the country is so divided right now? And we're like, no fakes. It's a perfect example. I mean, over Grammys week, we had to talk to a lot of members that were across the aisle, and they heard our points.
Yeah, and I think though that's how, I think we have to continue to do that. Also understand this midterm, like we talked about earlier, being key.
Mhm.
But this is something else that I think is important. Um, in order for us to change the political process, we have to be involved in the political process. So I want to
Mhm.
see more young people running for office. I want to see
Oh, yeah.
more young people a part of this political process, so that we can, over the next 10 years, dictate those who are in leadership and be able to change these laws and be able to utilize the power that we have as a creative community. But if we are
Mm.
not involved, yeah, we're going to advocate, continue to advocate, but we also, and we have some great partners, by the way. We have some
Mhm.
great people in office that get it, that are friends to the creative community, that are using their power, using their seat to fight,
Mhm.
but we need more. And we
Yeah,
need people not to be disenchanted, not to be so
right.
discouraged that they think nothing will change, but to actually roll up their sleeves and say, you know what? Let me run for office. Let me
Mhm.
be a city council person. Let me be a mayor. Let me be a governor, a
Yeah,
senator, a congresswoman, a congressman. Those seats matter. What is it,
that's right.
525 people between the House and Senate,
That's
um,
it.
that make up laws for all 300
That's
million
it.
Americans and really global policy? You talked about 500 people.
I love
500
that.
people.
That's a great message. Yeah, we need the young people to run for Congress or the Senate. I
Absolutely.
mean, look at AOC. She was
Absolutely.
28 years old from the Bronx when she got elected to Congress the first time. I mean, now look at Jasmine Crockett, okay?
Absolutely.
This is incredible. Prophet Mike Melindy and I were talking about, my becoming the campaign manager for Willie Prophet Stiggers to be seriously, this is your next trajectory, my friend. Okay. It's like when I was going to run for the Senate, Michelle
Right.
Lewis will remember Doug Davis said, Dina, I'm going to be your campaign manager. And I definitely would have run for the Senate,
Right.
if I could have like left my law practice to my kids, but
Right.
they were
Right.
private at the time. It's not,
Right.
you know, but I think that for sure this is in your trajectory. I got
Well,
to get you an astrologer because you got to listen to them tell you that
well,
this is
listen. I didn't know BMAC was in part of the trajectory, and here we are now, 5 years later, right? So,
yeah,
we never know how it play out, but what we do know is that is where the change shows up.
the
We have to
change.
keep our foot on the pedal. We have to keep our
Right.
eye on that prize, and in the real way. And salute to those who just made Congressman Crockett, Crockett,
Yeah,
and AOC. I mean, these are fiery sisters who
yeah,
are not playing no games. And if
yeah,
you watch, and if you're not familiar with them, Google, get on TikTok or YouTube. They got some serious sound bites when they are giving people the business. And
yeah.
understand, those are the people that we need in office. Those are the type of leaders we need over the next 10 to 15 years. These are the type of people that will make this country live up to its
That's right.
promise. And we owe it to ourselves, and more importantly, to our children, our grandchildren,
That's
because there
right.
are people who believed in a better America for us that fought so that we can be in these seats. So we have to
You
do
know,
our.
it's true. Like, I learned early on in my career through a lawyer named Joel Katz that there's two forms of power in
That's
America,
right.
money and influence. And when he asked me which one was more important, I'd been a lawyer for 10 minutes. I go, well, money, Mr. Cat. And he goes, no, Dina, influence. And,
Right.
thinking about that is absolutely correct. I mean, and growing up in New Paltz, New York with my activist mother is a perfect example. I mean, in the 90s, when I was already living in California in the late 90s, and my mother says, and this is when gay rights were under attack. I mean, it was seriously under attack. Before gay marriage, any of this stuff happened. And my mother was like, we need a young mayor in New Paltz. And growing up, in that environment where I grew up in a patriarchal system where the mayor was the man, the police chief, the school principals, the congressman, all these things. My mother's like, no, we need a young mayor who's going to speak the language.
Right.
And, there was this whole movement that my mom was a part of where the college kids that were going to college in New Paltz at the State University College of New Paltz, because they lived there for 9 months out of the year, if they registered their address to vote there, they could vote.
Wow.
This was a whole initiative that took 3 years
Wow.
to happen. And then they elected a mayor that was 23 years old, that was that was a student at the College of New Paltz.
Wow.
And then he was marrying gay people. And the sheriff's department says, stop marrying gay people, we're going to arrest you. And he was still marrying gay people, and he was arrested. Jason West, the mayor of New Paltz, was arrested in the late 90s for marrying gay people. But what they did, those college kids, is they registered to vote. 9,000 college kids registered to vote and elected a 23-year-old student to be the mayor of that town. And if you think about this country, 425 people in the House, 100 plus people in the 100 people in the Senate, there you go.
Yeah.
525 people are making the rules for everybody in this country.
And global policy now. But yes.
And global policy.
Yes. And when we because growing up, civics was like taken out of school, right? So that's not even something that we even learn about. And a lot of us, and I dealt with this as BMAC ran our Get Out the Vote campaign. No, you only come around every 4 years. They talk about the president, but if we take it out the sky and reduce it to the reality of what it is, yes, those small amount of people, that small amount of people. I mean, there are churches that get more than 500 people in there on a Sunday. You know what I'm saying? And you're talking about these people control so much and have so much power, but every movement of change in this country has started with young people. So I'm not surprised at what down in your town. And shout out to your mom. May God rest her soul. A great freedom fighter, and raised you in that spirit, which is why the world get to experience, your fire and your tenacity. Same with my mother. My mother was came out the tradition, although not an official member, but came out the tradition of the Black Panther movement. And since I was a young kid, all I can remember was her teaching me about self-pride and speaking truth to power and not being afraid to change shit and shake it up, rock the boat, as she would say, rock the boat. And was not nailed down will fall as it should. Rock it. It's that energy that I use even today as we continue to speak truth to power. So yes,
good trouble. That's called good trouble. John
trouble.
Lewis is up there with them right now.
Absolutely.
Good trouble, causing good trouble.
Absolutely.
So, but yes, and this is very important because people don't understand, like the midterm elections are next year. Like we literally, people, we have 14, 15 months here and we could change it. Mitch McConnell just announced that he's giving up his seat, like he's not running again. Well, there you go. There's a place there in the Senate that we got to go for. Like we got to get around this issue. We got to get around it.
And we also have to, find those people in office that really care about the creative community, care about democracy, care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and support those people.
Right.
You see, a lot of them are afraid to come out sometimes because of the lack of support. We have to be visible, and we have to be willing to support them at different levels. Even if you don't feel the issue is your issue, support it. You have to show them that we're willing to do our part as well. That's what they need to go fight.
I'm so glad you said that, because this goes to a relationship that SONA has, a very close relationship with Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren. She is a congresswoman up in, San Jose is her constituency, 408. Shout out to Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren. She's been on the House Judiciary for many years. And when we were in the middle of copyright hearings and copyright testimony and all kinds of stuff, when we were working way before it became the Music Modernization Act, people in the music industry were very petrified of her because the questions that she would ask, and because she was up there and all her constituents were the streamers, they just immediately thought this was an adversarial member. And, I got to know her very well when one of my clients was dealing with ICE during the first Trump administration, and she was the chairwoman of the Immigration and Citizenship Subcommittee. And in talking to her and asking for her help in that capacity, of course, she got involved and it was all great. And then I had this relationship with her, and I would ask her honestly, like Congresswoman Lofgren, these questions come about as a little, off center, and people think that you don't like music creators. And she's like, huh? And once I got to be friends with her and her husband, I realized she did not grow up with music in her house. She did not play music. Her kids didn't listen to music. And I was like, huh? Which was foreign to me, but then it hit me. Like, some people don't grow up with sports. Like, like they don't understand football because they didn't grow up with sports in the house. And then and this was it, Prophet, educating her on the fact that the prosecutors were using lyrics against people as evidence of their guilt, and creative expressions were under fire. And once she understood a lot of the things, and she would hear from songwriters directly, she got attached to the issues because she had these direct relationships. Michelle Lewis, who was the co-founder of SONA and who's now chairwoman of our board, literally became her delegate. And she's a very close friend of mine. And you and I, Prophet, when Jasmine Crockett wanted to get on judiciary, which, as you know, is the biggest, most powerful committee in the House, you and I worked behind the scenes calling a lot of our member friends to say, we need Congresswoman Crockett on judiciary. And you and I spent the whole Christmas holiday working behind the scenes,
right,
for Congresswoman to get on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the type of support that we have to give those who's willing to stand and fight for us.
That's right.
We can't leave them out there by themselves. We have to be willing to stand and fight for them. So no, that definitely.
Right. And she knows now, like, we told her, like, Congresswoman, you are going to be hearing copyright issues. Call us, because a lot of people that you wouldn't normally want to listen to are going to be for our bill, which means that just call, because we're going to need that as well. Very important relationship.
Without question.
Yeah, listen, Prophet, thank you so much for joining us. I have a few rapid fire questions that Kelly Brown's going to kick my ass if I don't ask you.
All right.
Just, what song do you have on repeat the most?
Right now it's probably Fight the Power. At least for the past 3 weeks, that's been like heavy rotation for me.
Public Enemy, man. They show up.
Yeah.
Flavor Flav, Chuck D, they're still showing up, Prophet.
Absolutely.
You know that.
Much respect to Flav and Chuck. I just hosted a screening of a brilliant documentary called Following Harry, documentary around Harry Belafonte. And when they sent me the link to watch it, one of the first people that popped in it was Chuck D. And I immediately hit him and said, hey, and he had just finished, Public Enemy just came to our dinner, our Jimmy Jam and Cherry Lewis Music Maker dinner, and impromptu performed Fight the Power. But when I seen him in it, and the way I seen his relationship with Mr. Harry Belafonte, I hit him and say, yo, bro, would you be willing to come in and speak on the panel discussion that we're going to do after the film? And he really had a bunch of other things going on, and did some rearranging to make sure that he was able to show up. And Flav is a brother of mine. We went out to Dina earlier about a month ago. We hit the streets and actually touched the people, and together we have the BMAC Fire Relief Fund, but then we also have a fund that we created with Flav through GoFundMe. So here's a brother who is like becoming like the global ambassador to love and
Yeah.
peace, you know.
Yeah.
So salute to them. But Fight the
Yeah.
Power is on heavy road right now for me.
Love it. And you also, right now, is same question. What do you consider the best activism song? This would be it. I would think this would be it.
That, but also optimistic. Um,
That's a good one.
I think optimistic is because that's what we need right now, right? I think we need to understand that things may look a little dismal. I tell you this, and I was gonna leave this to my last remark, but I'm gonna say it now. In that meeting with Andrew Young, one of the challenges that he gave us was to do more. He said, I know things may be a little weird right now, you know, and the country's a little, you know, in a frenzy and in a state of a shock in terms of this administration, the way he's coming in with the bulldozer. He said, but we had to imagine America before there was a Civil Rights Act passed. We had to imagine this country living up to its promise before laws were implemented. He said, we walked out our doors and literally had our heads beaten in and then had to come back in and strategize. Y'all can get through these 4 years. I mean, and it just really was a paradigm shift for me because it was like, oh, shit. Absolutely.
Changes your perspective.
So Optimistic, I think, is a song that I think will for me, is that inspiration that we need to endure, if you will.
I love that. And I love that he said that. You know, recently, one of my high school friends, you know, came to visit me, and I've known this woman literally 50 years. And she said to me, she's looking around my office and, you know, everybody here. And she's like, you know, she's like, Dina, you've never changed. You know, you've never changed. Like, she's like, this is just such a bigger version of you. And she was talking to me about it. And she's like, you know, and we were just talking about, you know, the diversity and where I live and who works here and everything. And I said, you know, she's like, why do you think your life is, you know, that this is how your life is with all the diversity in your life? And I said, you know what? I told her, I said, we used to drive down, my grandparents lived in Florida. So during Easter break, my mother, my father, and I, my sister and brother, we drive to Florida. And I'm the oldest child, okay? And I remember being on a beach in Florida, and there was a whites only sign on. This is in my lifetime. There was a whites only sign on the water fountain. Now, I don't remember that, but what I do remember is my mother pulled, I was told the reason why the police were coming. My mother pulled the whites only sign off the water fountain and they called the police.
Wow.
But my mother, when my dad, this is what I remember, because I was only 6 or 7 years old. My dad, in mitigating this, okay, when the cops were coming, my dad had to mitigate this. My mother took me and my brother and sister to the Black Beach because that's where we were going to be safe. Went to the Black Beach and we were safe. So that's my safety. You know, get to the Black Beach. It's like my kids say to me, Mama, whenever we get on the train, you sit with the Black people. Yeah, because that's safe space. And I love what Ambassador Young said to you.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Here we are complaining when our goal was to just eat. Well, come on. We're not getting our head bashed in. We're going to change the way this motherfucker is working. We're going to get ahead of this. We're going to have strategy, okay? And we're going to change all this.
And that's the key, the strategy. That's one of the things he doubled and tripled down on, strategy. Like, have a plan. We just can't be emotional. We just can't be angry. We just can't be frustrated. We have to have a strategy. And the strategy will include sometimes working across that aisle. And particularly when you're talking about getting laws changed and bills. So, yeah, absolutely.
I just had a God shot today. I'm telling you, I had a spiritual awakening. Stop being a bitch on this Instagram, Dina, okay? Because you got to get into that room. Okay, get into that room.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
love that shit.
yeah.
Okay, who is your dream panelist and on what topic? Profit.
My dream panelist. I would like to see a panel with Winnie Mandela, my mother,
Mm,
um, a
mm,
Chuck D,
mm-hmm.
um, one more person that will fill out that panel, um, and Huey Newton.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And I just think the topics just should be,
Hmm.
like the issues that we have globally
Mm,
throughout the diaspora.
mm,
What can Black America, Black people in the UK, Black
mm,
people in Africa, Black people in the Caribbean, what can we do to be more
mm.
unified and use our global power to impact change?
I would love to see a panel with you and me, Afeni Shakur,
Okay.
my mother, and Isabel Wilkerson.
Ooh,
That shit would be on fire.
ooh.
You think?
Absolutely.
That would be a great panel.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, well, we talked about how we can make change and affect policy today. So the young people have to run. We
Yes.
got to get around this midterm election. This is huge, 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 people. Please listen. We have to work across the aisle. And then, Prophet, what is your favorite quote? I know mine is from you, but what is your favorite quote?
Well, it'll probably be that one. For me, there's two types of people in this world. One is a thermometer, and that job is to go up or down, depending on the climate in the room. And the other is a thermostat, and that job is to set the climate in the room. And I think more of us have to move with that sort of thermostatic energy. Don't just be so reactive to what's happening. Be bold enough to speak truth to power and set the climate and be very clear about that. So that's one of the quotes that I live by. I try and be a thermostat in every room I'm in.
That's it. I love that quote. Love that quote. Listen, we're just about in an hour. Okay, so thank you all for joining us. And Prophet, thank you for being here. The replay will be available on the SONA YouTube channel, so stay tuned for that. I believe Faith has placed a link in the chat along with our website and all of our social handles. So if you're not already a member of SONA, please, please, please consider joining us, okay? Because we work very closely with the Black Music Action Coalition. We work very closely with SAG-AFTRA and with the Music Artists Coalition. Remember, you do not have to be a songwriter to join SONA. And Prophet, any final thoughts from you for our audience?
Just thank you all. Thank you, Dina. Thank Michelle Lewis. I want to thank Sona just for being such an inspiration to me. You guys have helped me grow as a leader, helped me grow as an advocate, and I thank you guys for that. I look forward to the work that we continue to do together. And then those of you who's watching, join BMAC. This is an organization for everyone. We are here to eradicate social and eradicate racism within the music business, but also to inspire
Mm,
our country, inspire our industry to live up to its full potential. Music is the universal language, has the power to change the world. Artists have always been on the front line of every curve that have taken place in terms of great things in this country. So the challenge to us that Harry Belafonte gave a mandate in this documentary. And that mandate is that we have to do more. Like we have to do more. There was a time when artists and activists were almost one.
mm,
And you've seen artists, activists take their money and put it behind movements. Shout out to Chappell Roan for that
mm,
bold speech that she gave on the stage of the Grammys, and then
mm,
challenge the industry. And salute to all the companies that stepped up to the plate to match her donation to ensure that healthcare, which is something that we're working on very
mm,
closely and very diligently with SONA and BMAC, We're working on the plan to address that, but salute to her. But this is what we need. This is the responsibility of the artist community to speak truth to power boldly. And so that would be my only
Mm,
words to those who's watching. The mandate that Harry Belafonte gave us was to do more. And in the spirit of Chapel Roan, let's speak truth to power every opportunity we get.
mm. And that is an amen. See you in the
Thank
Senate,
you,
my
guys.
friend.
Peace.
Peace.
What's up, girl? You still there?
I'm here. We off?
Hi, we're off.
Okay.
Stream is ended.
Nice.
Awesome.
Okay. I'm going to lay down.
Okay, please go lay down.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah, we will offline later. Okay.
Okay. Bye, love.